Those marked with the Brad Pitt tip, Brad Pitt tip. There we go. Okay. So, just. I'm pretty confident that I can drill a nice perpendicular hole using this. We are ready to final level and polish sand this and take it to the buffer. So what I'm gonna have to do now is go through this with 400 grit just to level out all this orange peel, and then I'll come back in with 1,000, then 2,000, then 3,000, and I'll be ready to take this bad boy to the buffing machine. I may go ahead and drill these out before I do any of that sanding, because the tuners I bought are in fact larger than the pre-drilled holes here. I popped on to Amazon and bought this nice little set, which I'll link in the description. I will be using the 1/8 inch to 1/2 inch bit, which goes in 1/32 steps. The ultimate goal that I'm aiming for here is 25/64. So what I will do is I will actually drill this down to 1/64 too big, which happens to be 13/32. And the reason I'll do that is because I have a 25/64 drill bit, and so what I want to do is create a nice place for that to slide right in and begin drilling. So that's 1, 2, 3 ridges down. That's where I'm aiming for. So I want to make sure I stay nice and perpendicular to the surface. Oh my goodness. There we go. And that keeps the bit from wandering when I go to drill that 25/64. It also keeps tear out to an absolute bare minimum. And I'll need to do this on both sides for every one of these holes to ensure that the drill out is a nice smooth process. Come on. I have sanded this down to 3,000 grit. I'm pretty darn happy. That is a very smooth surface, and I'm ready to take it to the buffer. So I got my buffer here. I'm going to use this spare block of wood to sort of clean out the wheels because I don't have a buffer brush. But I'll use the edge to kind of clean out the wheels and then warm the buffer up on this before I add the compound. Now the reason I'm doing this is because the dude at Stu Mac told me to, and he knows a lot more about guitars than I probably ever will, so it makes sense to follow advice. Once I got it warmed up, then I'll start polishing over here on my fine wheel and then move to the extra fine. I think that Stu Mac sells a 3rd buffing compound. I do not have that compound. I think it's like a medium cut. But that's part of the reason why I just go ahead and buff to 3,000 grit to kind of get it up to where I just need to take it to the fine wheel and I should be good to go. Alright, so I did have to go ahead and take this back to the bench and take some 1,000 grit to it because there was just too much orange peel around this outside edge, and I just needed it a lot smoother than that. I'll put a final polish on it with the very fine and see what we get. I am doing the last little bit of touch up on the body before I take it over to the paint booth for the final 2 layers of clear. I'm really excited to get this done. Frankly, it's been kind of a long road, but it's been a great learning experience, and I am this close to having this done. But of course there were a couple last minute things I wanted to add. So bring into this camera, and I don't know if the camera's really going to pick that up, but what I've done is, for the most part, I have hard 90 degrees on most of this, and I like the crisp, sharp outline it gives to the otherwise roundish guitar body. But I do have a comfort issue with Telecasters that, well, generally don't have an arm card, but also have that hard, sharp binding. That can be pretty uncomfortable, and I am not about that. So what I've done is I've come in here with 320, 400, 1,000, 1,500, and then 3,000, and just very carefully sort of rounded off and worn in the edge of the binding from here to here. And the way I did that was I started with the higher grit, the well, I guess lower number grit, in through this area, and then with each increasing grit size I'd go a little farther out to give a nice like gradient smooth, so it's almost like it's been naturally worn in and nice and comfortable. I'm very happy with how that turned out, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing back here on the belly carve. From here to here there will also be a nice round, smooth, like almost like it's been worn in. Then when that's done, I can finally take it to the booth, spray the last 2 layers of clear, and then it will just be polish, buff, install hardware, set up. Still got to do the frets, but that's okay. We'll get that done too. This close, just got to bring it home. Start with a relatively rough grit. I want to be very gentle with it. Just kind of come in on the 45, make sure my position, and I'm going to use the narrower side since I've got a concave curve here. Go. So now I'm coming in with a little bit of 200. Some nice round motions, take it out a little bit further. Now I know, or I've heard at least, that it's quite taboo use sandpaper in binding, and I completely understand that. However, this is kind of a special case. Step up to 320, come out even a little bit further, still being pretty gentle. Don't need a lot of pressure here, it's just plastic. In fact, I'm not even always letting the entire weight of the eraser rest on the surface. Sometimes I'm even pulling it back a little bit beyond that, just to make sure I'm getting a nice round surface. Now at this point I would switch to 600 or 800 if I had it. At this time I do not. So I'm going to go ahead and bump to 1,000. Let me see what I got here. I need to go a little longer with the 1,000 just because I'm jumping grits so much. And where'd my 1,500 go? 1,500. Okay, and final touch, 3,000. Oh man, that's nice. Before I take this to the buffer, I want to go ahead and get all the hardware mounted, just in case I end up with any scratches. No serious scratches, but any scratches in the surface, it gives me a chance to sand them out before I spend time at the buffer. The first thing we're going to do is create the mounts for our pickup. It'll be a direct body mount, so I need to put these inserts into the body. They're 3/8 inch long. They don't have to go like absolutely all the way in, but you know, I want them flush. I've got more than enough thickness left in the body to do that. Okay, so the hole is a little less than 1 inch, and our body is a little less than 1 3/4. So we've got around 3/4 of an inch. 3/8, well, that's half of 3/4. Totally within reason. Before I put these in here, these, by the way, It's a product I'm using, link in the description. It asks for a 17/64 drill bit. I don't have a 17/64 drill bit, so we're going to give it a try with a 1/4. I've never had one of these threaded inserts come out before, glue or not, and in fact, I have come to like using a bit of paste wax, coat the inside of the hole. Yeah, there we go. That's better than putting on the threads, I think. I don't know about a 1/4. What's the next size up? Oh man. Yeah, not trying to get stabbed. For holding in a pickup, yeah, I don't think I've got any problem using this drill bit. So let's try a 5/16. Let's just try it. Oh man, oh, that went in so easy. Even though it is only supporting a pickup, I still want it to be solid and not moving around. Put these guys in here. Yeah, man. That's really good. Yes. Okay, we have a methodology, but I need to mark the holes for the pickup. Got my holes marked. Now I gotta drill these bad boys. Start with the relatively easy one. All right in that point. Oof, there is just enough room to do this. I mean, just. Okay, next step. Touch a little paste wax. That's perfect. I am installing the tuners, and right now I am, although I have briefly fitted all of them, as you can tell by the colors and dents there, I am actually just putting on the first and last. And the reason for that is because I need these on in order to set up the bridge. Now I need to tighten those down a little bit. Now I can go ahead, expose the fretboard, and mount the nut. After that I can put the neck in the body and use it to make sure that my bridge is perfectly lined up. So I got a Graphtec Tusk Nut blank. Here I'm just shaping it on a flat sand with 120, 220, and 320 grit sandpaper. After I've got it roughly the right shape and thickness that I want, then I'll polish it up with the 1000 grit orbital sander green paper. And of course there's no better way to spend a Sunday evening than watching Texas Toast while sanding a Tusk Nut. What's up guys, it's a new evening, I'm back in the garage, and I am getting the bridge in place. So my process for this is fairly simple. Okay, it's especially easy on a Telecaster. It's one of those manufacturing tricks, I suspect, that Leo used to make these so much easier to produce. Once you have your bridge pickup route done, it basically sets the bridge for you, and all you need to do then is some micro adjustments. So what I do is I take a decent sized piece of masking tape, place that down over the top. So see here, I've got two of my tuners in and mounted. I've got the nut in place, although it's not cut yet. We'll get to that after this. And I've got my high E and my low E, whichever one you think is which. Now something I did notice, I ended up having to go ahead and drop a screw in here because the magnet on these pickups is so strong that if the string hits it, it can kind of pull it out of true. But I can see there, that's looking about where I want it. So even though I'm doing this on a Telecaster and the bridge route kind of places the bridge for me, I do still have to do some little micro adjustments to get it right where I want to be. However, this methodology is still applicable to basically any bridge. You need to find where a bridge is supposed to go. It's just how you get it done. So I kind of roughly place it on the nut about where it should be, and then I'm looking at this hole where the bridge saddle sits, and I just make sure that I've got a nice line there. I find one of the positions, then I tape it down, then I check the other one to see if it's right. If I have to do some minor adjustment, I can. Very generally speaking, once you find one, the other one just falls into place because all these parts are made to work with each other. I do like to just kind of give it a visual check. Now I am ready to drill the mounting holes for the bridge plate. Bridge plate itself recommends a 7/64 bit, which I do not have, but that is 1/64 below a quarter. It's always good to test. So I did drill a hole and ran this in, and yeah, it's got lots of bite. It's not long before I have to use a screwdriver, and a few turns after this, I have to actually switch to a drill. This is definitely going to bite in and going to hold really well. The Telecaster bridge that I'm using requires string through holes in the body. After carefully marking those holes while the bridge was on, I use a brad point drill bit to start each of the holes. After that, take it over to the drill press so that I can drill a perfectly perpendicular hole through the body. I have also applied a piece of plywood to the back of the body to help prevent blowout. As I drill these holes, I'm careful to line up each one to make sure that I'm getting it in the exact right spot. It was a bit challenging to get all the way through the body because the thickness of the body is just about as long as the drill bit is. That's fine. There we go. It's pretty good. I drilled out the space for the countersunk washers with basically the same methodology as I had used the previous time. I did make sure to drill out the existing hole because a lot of finish had built up in it. I've got my mounting holes, I've got my through holes set up to go, I've got the mounting for the neck pickup done. I need to transfer these components over to this plate because this is the plate I'm going to be using. I will not be using silver knobs. I've actually switched them out for black ones, which I think looks pretty darn slick. The first thing to do is to buy one of these lovely crimson notched straight edge, or a straight edge from somewhere else if you want, and make sure that we are nice and straight. There is no light leakage. It looks like there is, ever so slightly, a bit of a bow. I need to adjust the truss rod a little bit and make sure that that is perfectly flat. As I was checking with the fret rocker, I found about 6 spots where one fret was higher than its neighbors. In order to correct this, I opted to go ahead and spot correct these frets and then do a gentle leveling with a sanding beam across all the frets. I don't particularly have a special technique for taping up the fretboard. I just use thinner slices of tape, which allows me to double up on the wide spots, and then it isn't until the very tail end of the fretboard that I start having to trim the tape itself. So here I am just doing the spot leveling, making sure to regularly check with the fret rocker until I get it right where they need to be. Once I'm done with that, I go ahead and go over the entire board again with the fret rocker just to be sure I didn't miss anything. So then I go ahead and level sand all the frets at the same time using the sanding beam, making sure to do a little extra heavy on the bridge side frets so that there's a slight drop off as you move towards the bridge. Then of course it's time to crown the frets, which I do using a StewMac Z file. This makes this job really easy. Then I use a safety file with a rounded edge to work over the ends of the frets. The purpose here isn't to make sure that they're perfectly smooth, but that there's no sharp 90-degree turns anywhere, so that when I come back in a minute with sandpaper, I can get nice round edges. Then I need to go through and touch up each fret individually with the Micromesh touch-up stick from StewMac. Each of these has 3 different grits, and so it will take 3 passes to take these frets from rough to a polished shine. Then I go over the side of the fretboard with a 320 grit adhesive backed sandpaper square. There's 3 purposes for this. One is to smooth out the line between the clear coat and the raw wood of the fretboard. Another purpose is to make sure there are no tiny microscopic bits of metal sticking out from the fret tangs. And then finally, I actually use this to sand the corners down on the fretboard in between the frets to give it that nice worn-in feel. The last thing I want to do is go over the corner of the fretboard here with quality sandpaper wrapped around a sanding sponge. I start with 1000 grit, then move up to 2000, 3, 5, 7, and 10, each time going up and down the fretboard multiple times. The point here is to work everything in, fret ends, edge of the fretboard, and side of the fretboard, and just give it that really super smooth, worn-in feel. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.